Hello and welcome to the Empowered by Claudia podcast, where we explore all things self-development. Here you'll discover practical tools, tips and strategies to help you feel more confident, empowered and in control of your life. I'm Claudia, I'm your host, I'm a registered nurse and mindset coach, fear of success instructor, and most importantly, your guide on your self-development journey. I know firsthand how confusing and overwhelming and isolating this path can feel. So I created this podcast so you never have to navigate it alone. Hi, before we dive into today's episode, I want to talk about that moment of transition. You know the one, it's 5 minutes in the car after a long shift, or the seconds before you walk through the front door to start the evening chaos. It's that tiny gap where you realise that you are still carrying the weight of the last role into the next one. It is incredibly hard to feel empowered and present when you are stuck in survival mode. And that is why I created the transition tapes. They are professional audio resets designed for those exact moments when you need to reclaim your headspace and your sanity. They give you a bridge to close one door and open the next with intention, rather than just reacting to the noise. You can find the link in the show notes to grab your tapes today. Now, let's get into the episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Empowered by Claudia podcast. I'm so excited to be here, and today is a special day. It is International Nurses Day. And being a registered nurse for 20 years is a huge thing for me. And normally when I was working in the NHS, we'd get a cake, a little cupcake going round if you happen to be working on that particular day. I want to dedicate this episode to all of the nurses who work so hard and essentially put everybody else first. So this episode is for you. And you might listen and you think, but I'm not a nurse. I guarantee there is something in this episode that will resonate and that will mean something for you as well. We'll work together as a team. This no man has an island kind of thing. Like, we work together and we rely on each other. But that teamwork doesn't necessarily serve us in caring for ourselves. So we come together to care for our patients. That's a given, but we still push ourselves to show up when we are running on empty. We carry that emotional weight of shifts, of encounters with patients long after you've left the building, maybe even years have gone by. And we put off caring for ourselves, taking those actions that we know will protect ourselves from ill health, whether that's physically or mentally. We feel like the priority is always the patient, but not actually putting our oxygen mask on first, like looking after ourselves so that we can show up the best for our patients. And it's quite common to say that, nurses are terrible patients because we don't know how to rest, and we know so well how to look after other people, but we neglect ourselves. We tell ourselves that we'll look after ourselves when things get a little bit less chaotic, when I've reduced my hours, when the kids are a bit older, when I've got less responsibilities outside of work, when we're not as short-staffed. And we're always putting that off. And we keep going, we keep running ourselves into the ground. And so in this episode, I'm going to get you to ask yourselves some questions and really think about what we can do today, rather than putting off. Maybe, for me, it was, well, I'll start going to the gym when I'm not working, that'll be my thing. And I thought, no, I can't keep putting it off. I need to start now. I need to get these habits in now. I can't just keep saying, I will do this later. So if you're sitting there listening and thinking, actually, yeah, this is resonating. There are things that I have been saying, oh, I'll do this when and putting things forward to the future, this episode is going to be for you, but also for a nurse, maybe at the beginning of their career. I'm going to share some insights about what I wish I'd known earlier, what I wish wasn't hard-won knowledge that came with pain and suffering, but actually how we can take care of ourselves in a system that doesn't really allow for us to take our foot off the pedal. We've got to go, go, go. We don't get that break, and how we can actually build that in for ourselves. And those shifts that aren't great, that you come out of and you don't even know where to start. It's too raw to process. But you have got to then go in full pelt into normal life, whether that's being a carer, whether that's having children, whether that's just actually making sure that you have got a clean uniform to come back tomorrow and that you've had some food and you get some sleep. Whatever it is, we need that time to decompress. And so today is not about doing more or being better. It's about taking a minute to reflect and seeing what little changes can I make to support myself. And so I want to encourage you to really think about what it means to care for yourself. Not in that standard self-care way, but actually that meaningful care. What does meaningful care mean to me? And we're going to stop saying, I'll look after myself when, and we're actually going to think about how we can do that now. So, right, let's dive in. So, I've been there. You're absolutely exhausted from working those shifts, from swapping from days to nights and nights to days. You don't know if you're coming or going. And it can feel really hard to get a routine in, to establish those healthy habits, to actually make sure you've had time to do a food shop, time to book in a gym session, all of those things. And we adapt to this. Well, it's too hard to fit it in. It's too difficult. It's not a priority, or I'm too exhausted. And actually, I was delivering a workshop yesterday about chronic pain, essentially, and how our mind and body are connected. And we were talking about that frustration that of only being able to do a 15-minute walk until the pain then prevented that person from walking anymore. And actually, that comes with the frustration, but that will only be what I can ever, that's all that I'll ever be able to do is that 15 minutes, that's it. But that isn't necessarily it. We can build on that. It's a start. You know, rather than thinking of all of the negatives and thinking, oh, well, it's too difficult this week. I've got too many shifts. I don't know how I can fit it in. What little thing can we fit in that's for us? So is it that I can fit in a 15-minute walk in today, but tomorrow maybe it could be 20. Maybe don't judge ourselves on any inconsistency and not having that fixed routine, because ultimately when your shifts aren't fixed, it's really hard to put a routine in. One thing I found helpful is actually going through my calendar. Yes, I'm old school and I have a paper one, but actually blocking out that time, committing to gym classes. There may be different days for different weeks, but actually going through and going, okay, well, I can squeeze that in there. Or making a date with a friend and say, let's go for a little walk. Let's meet up and have a chat. Scheduling that in, scheduling self-care, I think, is so important because you're making a commitment to yourself. You're not going to forget about it. If you say, well, I'll make sure I do like 3 times this week, when are you going to do it? Because the minute you put it in, you're more likely to stick to it. Yeah, things might happen last minute that mean that you can't do it, but you're a lot more likely to stick to it than if you haven't set a date and a time. Because when it's not scheduled in, you're not going to get that reminder. If you put it on your phone calendar, it will tell you like 2 hours before or whatever, or the day before, and it'll pop up and go, this is what we're meant to be doing. And so you're making it easy, making it a no-brainer, putting it as part of your routine. And when I keep saying routine, I don't mean a set, every Monday I do X, every Tuesday I do. Your weekly routine will change. But if you can say my day off routine is, I'm going to do this, put it in, commit to yourself, and actually treat yourself, give yourself that care plan. What is my care plan? What is my care plan for health? How am I going to look after myself? That might be maybe booking in with a counsellor and having that therapy and actually committing to yourself that you're going to do that. Maybe it's working with someone like me, like with a coach, and we can work towards those goals. Maybe it is actually saying, right, well, this week my day off is Tuesday, so I'm going to do a food shop and I'm going to meal plan and I'm going to batch cook, and I've got all my meals prepped for the rest of the week. And I know that when I'm on shift, I've got a nice packed lunch. I'm going to save myself some money. It's going to be healthier, and I'm going to feel better for having done that. And I think when we stick to those promises, when we schedule that in, we are telling ourselves that we are worthy of that commitment. We're not going to abandon our needs. And we are so used to dropping everything when the poo hits the fan and like everybody's got to rush in, and we deprioritize our own needs. How many times have you realized it's suddenly been 7-8 hours since you've been for a wee? Because you've been busy looking after your patients. It wasn't safe to leave. And whilst there are times when it really isn't, most of the time we just have got so used to ignoring our own needs that we block them out until it is too urgent, until you're like, I really, really need to drop everything right now. And that is not a way to live. It's definitely a survival thing. It's definitely when our sympathetic nervous system's activated, we are more focused. We're like literally, like I can't think about being right now, but we don't want to be in the stress response at work. We don't want to be in that survival mode, because the survival mode, when that adrenaline is coursing through our system, is getting us really hyper-focused. But it means that we're not necessarily seeing the big picture. We're not necessarily asking the right questions, not seeing the whole scenario. And whilst that hyper-focus, algorithm-based care works in an emergency situation, and it's very, very good at what it does, that's why we have these algorithms, that's why we have the training. But actually, when we are thinking of a non-emergency situation, level of thinking is not going to really, really support our patients, because we're not going to be thinking outside the box. We're not going to be thinking about all the eventualities, about the impact on their wider life, because we're literally just thinking about the essentials in the emergency situation. And, there's no blame. Our brain has done that because it's triggered. It's like we're in this survival situation. We're in this emergency situation. We need to do what we need to survive or to help our patients survive. But that is not good. We're, diverting our essential blood flow away from our digestive system, from needing a wee. We're saying that actually that's not important right now. We literally just focus on getting blood flow to our muscles. We are focusing on blood through the brain and the lungs so that we're ready to take action. But if we are not healthy, if we are not able to take care of ourselves, one, that depletes us. We end up in this chronic stress, this maladaptive state where our nervous system doesn't know whether it's coming or going. It's constantly looking out for the signs of something bad. So is my patient going to deteriorate? And that is important, but we have to regulate ourselves to be able to switch between those states, to intentionally go, okay, so I know the signs that my patient might be deteriorating, but I don't need to be in full on stress response thinking they're deteriorating right now, because they're not. So we need to be grounded in that present moment. And when we're in that moment, we are going to make decisions that are much more logical and calm and considered rather than being in this panic mode. And again, the caveat is, if you are a paramedic at the side of the road and there's been a massive collision and there's lots of casualties, then clearly we're going to have to triage and we're going to have to make those really snap decisions. But day-to-day nursing generally isn't like that. We have time. And if we take a second, take a breath, and really think, okay, is the priority here? What really needs doing? And I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about delaying going on breaks because of wanting to get everything done before having a break. And actually, it's a false economy, because when we are tired, hungry, needing a wee, we are not fully focused. We are not giving 100% of our attention because our body is sitting there going, I'm really hungry. Our brain cells are not going to be firing on all cylinders when we're lacking in glucose. And so we're actually doing ourselves a disservice. It will take longer to get things done than actually if we took that break. We hydrated, we had some nutrients, we emptied our bladders, and just take a minute to breathe and reset and go, okay, so what's my priorities going back? And you know what? You can hand over. Like, we are a team. We are meant to be supporting each other. So why are we in a situation where we can't go for a break if there's a task outstanding? The whole point is that someone's meant to be covering us. They're meant to be looking after these patients in our absence. It shouldn't be that everything has to be done before you can have a break, because actually that is not necessarily going to be the best care. Particularly if you're urgently needing a wee, you're going to be rushing through and you're more likely to make a mistake. So you don't need to earn rest. And actually, it's something that we should protect fiercely. I mean, number one, you don't get paid for breaks. But number two, we're human. We're not robots. And I used to joke that, if they could catheterize us and give us an NG tube so we didn't have to have a break for a wee or to eat, then they would. But that's not healthy. That shouldn't be the aim. We should acknowledge that we need time for our brains to catch up, to take a step back, to say, okay, nobody needs me right now. I've handed over. They are safe. They are cared for. And right now in this moment, I'm just going to take a zoom out, think about the big picture. And you know what? Coming back from that break, you're going to feel more able, more refreshed to be able to have those conversations and say, actually, do you know what? I think the reason that my patient hasn't been doing that well is because X, Y, Z, and maybe we could try this instead. Because we are not just task robots. We have all of this knowledge and skills and intuition. And that is what makes nursing, is that critical thinking, and that thinking, right, okay, this is the evidence base. This is what we think with our knowledge, with our experience, will be beneficial for the patient. But also from talking to the patient, this is in alignment with what they want, with what they value, with what their aims for their care are. But if we don't stop, if we keep rushing around, if we keep in that survival mode where everything is an emergency and everything is rush, 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 we don't take that time to stop and think logically about what the right next step is. And I hear you. I know you're saying to me, but we're short-staffed. I don't have time to think. I don't have time to go for a break. And I get that that's really scary, that you worry about your patients, about your and thinking, this is not what I signed up for. I am not being the nurse that I want to be. There is a mismatch between what is happening in reality versus what I want to do. This is the care that I'd want to deliver versus the care that I'm actually able to in the constraints of this system, in a body that is exhausted, that's maybe not had my flexible working request approved, that is dealing with stresses outside of work. This nurse is not necessarily showing up as her best self. And we need to think about how we can advocate for not just our patients, but for ourselves and for the profession in the wider sense. And part of my decision to go into intensive care was that I felt like I wasn't able to deliver the care that I really wanted to give my patients working on the ward. I loved intensive care, not just because of the machines and everything. What I really loved was knowing everything about my patient, being able to advocate for them, having the knowledge, that deep knowledge of how the body works and how we could support them to heal. And yeah, there was definitely days where you didn't get everything done, despite only having one patient, because there is always stuff to be done. But that is the whole point of having a handover. It is 24-hour care. You don't need to get everything done. There are things that must be done. There are things that are time critical. But essentially, we are a team and we need to help each other. And this is what makes us a healthcare workforce. And so I'd say to you that if you're in a situation where you're not feeling supported, where you're feeling rushed on your breaks, or that you have to finish everything before going on a break because when you try and hand that over, you get attitude, or you just know that it won't be done by the time you get back. Really think about, is this the environment that you want to be working in? Is this healthy for you? But also reflect, like, how do you respond when you're covering somebody else for their break and they say, I've got stuff that needs doing? Or you can see that they're not taking their break and they're delaying it because they just want to do this first, this. Actually, can I help you with something? What can we do so that you feel safe to go for your break? Because when we're hungry and thirsty and needing a wee, we are not giving our full attention to the patients. We're not going to necessarily pick up on those little signs. And like I said, it takes longer. It really does. But yeah, have a real think about whether we are delaying being the nurse we want to be, whether we're delaying our care until things are perfect. And actually, maybe it's a question of, is this something I need to raise? Is this a risk? Is this team right for me? Is there something we can do to work more collaboratively as a team? Or is maybe a different ward the answer? I don't advocate always running from your problems, but sometimes the environment is harming us. Different personalities don't always rub together in the right way. Lots of private industries use personality tests, etc., when they are recruiting, just to see how the team will gel together. And those insights can really help when working as a team. And I think in healthcare, you don't necessarily know who you're going to be on shift with. And sometimes you walk in and you're like, oh, this is going to be a shift. Other times you walk in, you're like, this is going to be a great shift. Yeah. And it shouldn't be like that. But we need to operate in the reality. So even though things shouldn't be a certain way, we need to figure out whether the cost to us personally of trying to fix that situation outweighs the cost of moving. And sometimes it is actually, do you know what, for my safety and sanity, I need to extricate myself from this situation. And other times you might think, I really do need to extricate myself, but actually I want to change this. I want to make it better for other people. And then I'll leave. Or maybe it'll be better and I actually want to stay. And only you can make that decision. Only you know what your capacity level is and what you can cope with. Because essentially we all have different amounts of energy and resources. The other thing to think about is that how we perceive what's happened is based on our experiences, the things that have happened to us, and they shape how we see the world. So we may be used to teamwork being a certain way, and we might have this idealized version. We may have come from a wonderful environment where everybody helped each other and got on, and we go to a ward where they haven't had that. And maybe there has been a blame culture and people being singled out if they haven't got all their tests done. Or, very much like so-and-so did this wrong, so now everybody's going to know about it. And then people are in fear. So it's not that they don't want to work as a team, but they're trying to cover their backs and make sure that everything's done first so that nobody could throw blame at them. And it is very much every man or woman for themselves in that environment. And it's not that they're bad people. It's not that they don't want to work as a team. It's just they don't feel psychologically safe to. And so maybe just reflect in an attitude of generosity and think maybe they're not inherently not a team player, but maybe there's something else going on and they're just showing up how they can. And try and separate any feelings of your own worth from that. So don't go, well, this person wouldn't help me. That means they hate me. That means I'm a rubbish nurse. Nobody wants to be in a team with me. And actually think, I wonder why. I wonder what's going on for them. Often, it's not about you. People are in their own worlds, fighting their own challenges. And actually, how they respond to you in that moment really isn't about you. And we want that reassurance. We want the pat on the back. Oh, you're a great nurse. This is fantastic. But we have to know that from inside. What does a good nurse mean to me? Does it mean keeping up to date with my CPD and knowing that I am looking into things I don't know? So whenever I've moved jobs, I've kept like a reflective diary, and at the end of each shift, I've written down things I didn't understand fully or wanted to look more into, because that's how you learn. That's how you grow as a professional, is by looking into these things and actually going, do you know what? I don't know anything about that. Can you tell me more about that? Because I'm really interested to learn. And I think that's what makes me a good nurse. That I'm willing to listen and willing to say, actually, I don't know anything about that. Can you tell me? Can you share with me? Because I'd much rather say that I don't know than make a mistake that's going to hurt someone, because that's not what I'm here for. And so really get clear on what being a good nurse means to you. And, for people who are not in healthcare, replace that with whatever identity that you want. What does being a good mum, being a good sibling, being a good child, being a good employer mean? Rather than constantly waiting for that external validation, for somebody else going, you're doing a great job, to actually have that inner knowing, that inner confidence, that actually, do you know what? I know my stuff. I know what I'm doing. I know that I can put people at ease and I can talk to anyone. And then if you have those bad days, you can sense check it and go, okay, today wasn't great, but it doesn't mean anything about me as a person. It doesn't mean that I'm a terrible nurse. It means we're human and we can learn from this and we can reflect on it and we can improve and grow. And that's what we are here. We're not here to stagnate. We're here to grow and continue to develop. And nursing is very different to when I qualified 20 years ago. It evolves. And that, I guess that leads me into what I wish I knew when I started. I wish I knew healthy coping strategies, 100%. We didn't really talk about it at uni. We didn't really talk about the humanity. It was very much about the practical, this is how we care for patients. This is how we see whether a patient is deteriorating. This is the pathophysiology, et cetera, et cetera. And that connection between mind and body, the emotional impact of caring wasn't really mentioned. And when I was doing my master's level study for my professional nurse advocate certification, you notice the change in the literature and the introduction of supervision and the idea that we need to work on our resilience and our well-being, and that when we care for ourselves, that is when we can care for others. And those human factors, the human side of the caregiver has only been in recent years. Because cared for people care for people. I remember a matron saying that. I was delivering some self-care workshops, and I remember this matron saying, like, guys, if we are nothing. This system is nothing without the people. We're just a building with walls and beds. We need people who care. And it really stuck with me because she was invested in making sure that her staff had the best possible start to the winter. And it feels like we're in a permanent winter in the healthcare system. But it sticks with me because we are human. And one of the things I used to say I loved about nursing is the fact that no day is the same. It's always different. It's the same with coaching. Every coaching call is different and we talk about different things. And even if you were going to try and replicate it, it would come out differently. The workshops I deliver, I've delivered them a number of times now. Each time I see something different. Got the same slides, but things change. You have different thoughts. You have different people in the room asking different questions. Maybe it doesn't land the same way. Maybe you need to think on your feet and pivot. And when we feel solid in who we are as a person, what our values are, who we are as a professional, what is important to us, that helps us really shape our career and decide, do I want to stay in this situation? Do I want to change it? Actually, am I happy here? Is this a really good situation? We're not constantly looking for something better. Let's appreciate what we've got. And not to overlook that side. We have the functional skill set, the ability to cannulate someone, to take bloods, endotracheal tube suctioning, all of these things. These are things that we have trained our muscles to be able to coordinate and do, but we haven't necessarily trained that emotional side, the response to caring, the burden of care, because these patients stay with us. We came into this career because we care, because we want to make a difference, because we want to help people. It's naive not to even think about the impact of that. And thinking about boundaries and actually do we need to do extra shifts? Have we got the emotional capacity to care? Or is that actually a bit much right now? Because there's a huge thing about presenteeism, which is where we come to work despite not being well enough to work. And it's very common. And it's also linked with higher patient safety incidents because we're there, but we're not there. We're functioning on autopilot. And as I've said, we are not robots. We are using our intellectual abilities, but also we are looking and feeling. It might be feeling their pulse rate and the rhythm. It might be feeling like the skin temperature. All of these things, we are using our whole bodies and minds to care for patients. We are not robots. We cannot just do that without being present. Feeling of the irony of talking about presenteeism, but yes, you're present in body, but you're not there in mind because you're not well. And this is the problem. So on the surface, it looks like you're there, but actually you're not. And it'd be much better for you to be off sick, even though we know how hard it is to work on a shift that is short-staffed. But it's even harder that if you think you're staffed, but actually your staff are not there. And that's where the danger comes in, because you're being counted as one of the numbers, because you're being counted as being fully on. And I think having that confidence to phone in sick, to say, do you know what? I'm really not well. Rather than thinking, I'm going to let everyone down. It's going to be really tough. They're not going to be able to replace me at that short notice. But what's the risk if you go in knowing you're not well and then an error or something gets missed? That's going to make you feel even worse. And that's going to take longer to recover. And I hear you saying like the sickness policies are quite punitive and we're always worried about that. And I don't disagree. But on a human to human level, I really think you need to look out for yourself, because when you're caring for yourself, you're then better able to care for your patients. Back in COVID times, we got a thank you, 1 extra day's annual leave, but it wasn't annual leave. It was specifically for your well-being. And ironically, I never got to take mine because I was actually then off sick with Evie. And it couldn't be carried forward. But the idea was that you took a day off as a thank you for the work during COVID to focus on your well-being, to do something for you, not to use as childcare, not to use for a dentist appointment or something, but something to restore you. And that's the only time in my career that has ever happened. And obviously it doesn't even touch the sides. But this is the thing. We don't factor in that recovery. And I'm not talking about sleeping after a night shift. I'm talking about actually protecting some time for ourselves to reflect, to think about what we've been through, the things that we've experienced, the losses, and the impact that that's having on you as a human. And although we might feel like we have strong boundaries and that it isn't going into the rest of our lives, it will be seeping in. It will be impacting. And so I think that it's really important to schedule in that decompression time, to think about proactively, what can I do to keep myself well? It may be that you have a hobby. It may be that every year you make a date with your besties to go for a spa day and actually just have that frank conversation about, this is what real life is. We're not going surface, we're going deep, and actually just really exploring how we survive and how we get through. Because the things that we see, they leave a mark. And I can't watch sad things. I need to have, I watch a lot of children's films, to be fair, because I needed to counteract all of the negative. You see humanity at its worst. You see people on their worst days, particularly working in adult nursing. Like, you see death and trauma and it stays with you. And you need to find ways of releasing that pain. because pushing it down and ignoring it will eventually come back and bite you. So preemptively planning in that way of caring you, of releasing that stress, of building up your resources is so important. And I absolutely encourage you to go and speak to a professional nurse advocate or professional midwifery advocate or get clinical supervision, regardless of what field you're in, because it's so important to actually preemptively take that time to check in and go, what is working for me? What am I doing to relieve my stress? What am I doing to reflect? What am I doing to grow? And if you don't have someone like that at work, you can always reach out to me and book a session with me. I'm more than happy to support you, because we, for too long, have just focused on the practical nursing, the practical caregiving, and not the emotional impact. But that emotions, that connection, that is what makes us excellent nurses. But we need to respect that and give it its dues. We need to restore ourselves. So I'm going to leave you with just this question. What are we putting off doing that will help us restore, that is meaningful, that helps us process everything that we go through at work? You may or may not be working clinically or on a ward, but we all have pressures and challenges that come with working in the caring professions. And so let's just think about how we restore and what's one thing we can do today. One little thing, it doesn't have to be massive, to put ourselves first and really nurture ourselves. So a bit of a different episode for you today. I've really enjoyed talking about it. I had a few things that I knew I was going to talk about, but it went in a completely different direction than I was expecting, as ever. But happy International Nurses Day, and whatever you're doing today, I hope that you take some time for you and you take some time to listen to this message and nurture yourself. Much love. Bye. We spend so much of our lives advocating for others, but so little time advocating for ourselves. I know that when you have been on your feet all day or the house is loud, finding a moment of peace feels almost impossible. If you are ready to stop just getting through the day and start intentionally creating the life you want to live, the transition tapes offer you. This is your toolkit for reclaiming your headspace as you move from work to mum to being simply you. It includes 5 targeted audio resets and My Life First Blueprint to help you define success on your own terms based on your values. Head to the link in the show notes to grab the tapes and start prioritizing your own rhythm. And I will see you in the next episode. Take care, my love. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Empowered by Claudia podcast. I'm Claudia from claudiasabinawellness.com. If you are ready to take your next step and transform your life, all the ways to connect with me, whether for coaching, courses, or any other sort of support, are in the show notes or on my website at www.claudiasabinawellness.com. If you found value in this episode, I'd be so grateful if you could leave a review, share it with a friend, or post about it on social media. Don't forget to tag me at Claudia_Sabina_wellness. Your support helps more people discover the tools and guidance they need. I cannot wait to support you on your journey. Much love.